Seems to be holding steady. Is it? Oh, well, okay. I guess we'll wait. Scott, okay to go ahead and start?
Yes, Dr. Baker, I think you're set.
Okay. Welcome to the January 2021 Academic Achievement Committee meeting. I'm trying to pull up my agenda here, and it's disappeared on me. So I'm assuming that Instructional Council is first.
That's correct, Dr. Baker.
Okay, so that would be, is it Malangay this time?
We're going to have Miss Amy Powney, Math Curriculum Coordinator, with an Instructional Council update. So
okay,
Craig,
Amy,
if you could
okay.
pull in Miss Powney, that'd be great.
Dr. Gorman, would you like me to begin screen sharing at this point?
Absolutely, that'd be great, Jonathan. Thank you.
Okay, can everybody hear me? I just got pulled in, so.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you. Well, good afternoon. I'm sorry, I'm just sort of readjusting as you just shared that document so that I can make sure my document's in front of me as well. So good afternoon, Dr. Baker, Ms. Davis, Ms. Grant. I'm not sure if I can see everybody. I think that's who's here for our board members meeting, and Dr. Gorman and other members. I just wanted to give an update on our meeting. We had a meeting of Instructional Council on December 16th, and I was facilitating that particular meeting. It was a short meeting because there were no new course proposals that were introduced and presented at this meeting. So we spent much of our time discussing our future dates. We had set them tentatively through the first semester, not sure where we were going to be instructionally when we set the first semester dates back in the fall. So being that we are in hybrid, we have tentatively agreed upon these. They may need to change should we go to a different model other than hybrid. We might be changing the dates, but as far as we know, this should work for the rest of the year. So we will still continue to meet on the third Wednesday of each month. We have a meeting next week, January 20th, then again, February 17th, March 17th, April 21st, and May 19th for the remainder of the year. And we meet from 1 to 3 p.m. Our other order of business was to talk about future agenda topics. We talked about inviting Mr. Rodney Lewis to present courses from the Ottawa Hills Academy, and he will be joining us next week to do that. We also discussed that we would reach out to schools who have presented previously, CA Frost, Southwest, Museum School, to come back. They are, many of them have implemented courses that were brought to us earlier and are now going to be coming back for the course reflection part of our process so that we can hear how things went and discuss improvements or changes that schools might be making to courses. We also have reached out to Natasha Neal in her department to invite her, hopefully in the near future, to come to one of our meetings and share information about the new SEL curriculum for informational purposes only, so that we can be informed about what that might look like. And then basically we also had a discussion about, due to some changes in the timeline of when things should be proposed that happened last year, and just for clarification of our processes, we are working on a communication that we are going to put out district-wide that tries to be as clear and concise as possible about the process for submitting course proposals and what that timeline is, just so that we can streamline this process and make sure that all stakeholders in the district know how to do this, and in a timely manner, so that we are able to get the new courses put onto course schedules and for choices for students in a manner that makes it happen in time for things to take place. So we're working on that communication, and we just discussed how we're going to talk about it at our next meeting. The only other thing that we had for this meeting was Mrs. Tony Moore, who's the Director of Special Education, shared with us that the grant for the special education health curriculum, Making a Difference, was not approved. And however, the district is committed to this much needed curriculum. And so Mrs. Moore and her department are working on next steps, and will provide an update to us as soon as we know what's going to happen. As soon as she knows what's going to happen next, she'll give our council an update on how we'll move forward with that curriculum.
Okay, any comment or questions from the committee? All right, thank you very much, Amy. Let's move on to the, I guess our big presentation is around the hybrid virtual instruction plan, the return to learn. So I'll let Ron, Dr. Gorman, if you can take it over.
Absolutely. So Dr. Baker, members of the board, this evening we have a few agenda items for you. One of which, of course, is the hybrid virtual instructional plan overview. So I'll be going through that in great detail. We also have a map data overview. We will be sharing our map data from the fall, and Steve Petros will be sharing those data with you. Distance learning participation update. So because most of our presentation will be on the hybrid virtual instructional plan overview, we will give you the district participation update during virtual learning from a district rate perspective and not an individual school perspective. Eric will then, in closing, provide a professional learning update. That'll be the last of our presentations. And then, of course, we will have an open space for next steps and future topics. Jonathan, let's jump right into our plan. So this is a very busy document, and for that we apologize. But in our school district, we have many school choices and many grade configurations. So this is the model for hybrid elementary, pre-K-8, and middle schools. What you'll notice is at the top of the document, we have explicitly stated all of the schools that will be following this particular model. We will also, on our website, be hyperlinking these schools to the schedules in these particular schools. One thing I'd like to underscore before we start is we will be falling back on our traditional bell schedule for both models, both in the cohort A model for in-person instruction and the virtual model. So if you'd like to take a look at this model very quickly, of course, this is PK8 middle schools. Cohort A will go to school in person on Monday and Tuesday, and then cohort B will go to school in person on Thursday and Friday. Wednesday, all of our students and staff will stay home. That is a deep cleaning day for the school district. Students will work virtually on Wednesdays, focusing on asynchronous assignments and some small synchronous group work. Cohort B, on the days when they're at home on Monday, Tuesday, they will be doing some asynchronous virtual learning, and that will flip on Thursday and Friday. The next one, Jonathan. So this model is virtual elementary and pre-K-8. This is exclusively virtual. 3 hours of synchronous time in the morning, and then 2 hours of asynchronous time in the afternoon. So that's for this particular model. These are the schools that are affected by it. Notice again that Wednesday is a deep cleaning day for everyone, and these students will continue to work virtually. This is the virtual comprehensive middle schools model. Students in this particular model will complete their entire school day following through hours 1 through 6. The first 3 hours, they will participate synchronously. And then the next 3 hours, they will participate asynchronously. And then that model will flip on Thursday and Friday with those groups. Wednesday is a virtual day for all students. High schools, please. The high school model is the model where students follow their normal bell schedules. A third of the students will participate in person. 2/3 of the students will participate in a distance learning format from home. Some students will always participate virtually, where other students will go to school in person on Monday and Tuesday, and then the next group will go in person on Thursday and Friday. Again, Wednesday is a deep cleaning day for all students.
So this is being done, the virtual instruction here is being done by the same teachers with the classroom cameras, is that correct?
Absolutely. So this model has no deviation from the master schedule. Again, follows the traditional bell schedule, much like a normal school day. The only difference is some students will be in front of a teacher and other students will be working from home. Please keep in mind with this cohort model that we have, the groups will be much smaller in person. So about a third of the students in the Grand Rapids Public Schools have elected to work in an entirely virtual space. So therefore, we'll have 1/3 of the students in person in this particular model in front of the teachers, and 2/3 of the students will be working from home following the normal bell schedule. Are there any questions on the models I shared? So just a little bit of background information. All of these models were shared with our families last week. Schools will be also following up with communications that are specific to their schools, because I know that, again, these are pretty busy and address many schools. Transportation information has been sent to families. This is provided in English and Spanish to our families as well. Again, we're asking parents if they have any questions about particular schools to contact their school's principal, because those are the persons who will give the very best information regarding their schools.
Ms. Grant, Ms. Davis, this is kind of our chance to discuss the return to learn plan. Are there any questions about anything related to being back in person next week?
So I think I asked most of my questions this morning, but the new question that I do have is about the communication that teachers may have received about their role in this plan to return.
Absolutely. So great question. We met with the teachers union last Wednesday just to ensure that we were all on the same page as it relates to all of the models that we've shared with you this evening. We took many questions from the teachers union. Many of the questions regarded, of course, safety protocols, what are expectations when teachers go to the building each day, et cetera, et cetera. So we answered those on Friday. It seems as though folks were pretty content with what we shared as it relates to logistics. For the most part, teachers will follow their daily routines, except for ensuring that students are 6 feet apart, ensuring that students are wearing masks. Again, just taking every precaution necessary, making sure that classrooms and classroom furniture are cleaned after usage. At the elementary level, classrooms are being cleaned every 4 hours because those are self-contained environments, and then every hour in the high schools because students are switching classes. But for the most part, the meetings that we've had with the teachers union have been very good. They brought up some wonderful questions that we believe that we have addressed, and we're going to continue to dialogue with our teachers.
You mentioned the discussion about safety issues. Just in general, if we get any further questions about, certainly families can choose to stay at home if they'd like, if they feel it's safer. But in general, just what are we hearing from the authorities about the safety of returning for children and families and teachers?
Sure. So on December 18 and January 13, there were state epidemic orders that allow pre-K-12 schools to essentially gather with no limitations. We've also gotten guidance from the Kent County Health Department and the state of Michigan that as long as we have our mitigation measures in place, that it is appropriate for students to return to school. The governor and the health director have gone on record a couple of weeks ago, or I'm sorry, last week, and referenced that we want all students to be back in school by March 1. And so what we've done is we will have students back in school before March 1. We, of course, are the last school district in the region to go in person. So we've tried to be as safe as possible. We have mitigation strategies in place. So even though we will be going back in person, what makes our model different from many models is that we were able to be 6 feet apart because, of course, we're going with a hybrid model. In many instances, classes will have 10 or fewer students every single day. And of course, we are requiring students to wear masks. Not only are we requiring the students to social distance, but the teachers to social distance as well from the students. We have many staff members who will not be going back to school. Will not be going back to in-person school. They'll be working in a virtual space. These are staff members who maybe have pre-existing conditions, who of course have notes from their doctors. And we have, we're of course allowing those particular staff members to work from home. Dr. Baker, as I also referenced before, about 5,000 students will continue to go to school in a virtual space, even when we go back in person. So of the approximately 15,000 students, 10,000 students will continue. 10,000 students will, of course, have in-person instruction, but 5,000 students will be working from home. So again, we continue to follow the guidance of the Kent County Health Department, the governor, the state epidemic orders, and we also have mitigation strategies to have safe schools. And again, I believe we're going above and beyond with the hybrid model, where we're not bringing 20 or 25 students into one classroom where it will be impossible to social distance. One additional caveat: any place that the students gather in the building, there will be seating charts. So the principals will be working with students this week. There'll be seating charts in the classrooms. If students go to media centers, there will be seating charts, and as well as the lunchroom. And that's really, if we have to do any tracing over the next couple of weeks, it will be relatively easy to figure out, which students were involved in tracing. So we were one of the last districts to go back in person, but we believe we have a really good plan, and following the guidance from the state and the governor, we're ready to go back.
Dr. Gorman, this is John Matias. I'm wondering too, in terms of both, student safety, certainly with COVID, but also the physical safety. So we have our officers and whatnot stationed in our various schools in terms of the physical safety of our students.
Absolutely. So of course, at the secondary level, there are officers assigned to all of those buildings. At the elementary level, we have many folks who are actually staying in buildings, but we have other folks who are kind of roaming the district in small geographical areas. But there are security officers in all buildings, or security officers at the lower levels who can be called upon if needed.
Ms. Davis, are you still with us?
I'm here, yep.
Yeah, you have any questions or want to make any comparisons to your experiences with your school?
I don't have any standout questions. I think that the seating charts are a good idea as far as contact tracing goes. I've been in person mostly outside of 3 weeks since the beginning of the year, and not with a hybrid model. So the social distance, I think, will be, a lot more achievable with half the amount of kids in the classroom. So I will say that from my experience, our kiddos are doing great with the face masks, and I'm hopeful that you know, we have a great plan in place. I'm hoping that it will work out.
How about just, it sounds like I don't know how to phrase it, but just like these are like complicated maps you have. And this doesn't even include where the air cleaners are going and all this stuff. How is the prep going? And then how are the building staff, both administrators and teachers, feeling about prep for next week?
Yeah, we've been having standing meetings every Monday at 10 o'clock to work with our principals to answer any questions that they have. Of course, on Monday mornings, we also provide updates. The ventilation equipment, of course, is being installed right now in the buildings that need them. Of course, these are many of the older buildings in which they're being installed. That seems to be going very well. Teachers, of course, are getting into buildings this particular week. So teachers have the option this week of going into the buildings to teach virtually. And then, of course, when their day ends, they can do some of that classroom setup. But this entire week, the buildings were open to allow teachers to get in and get set up. And our administrators, of course, are helping just set up buildings, having those sign-in procedures, having areas for masks, extra PPE, etc. So that seems to be going pretty well, Dr. Baker. I haven't heard anything other than it is going well at the building level.
And forgive me if you already answered this, because I did lose you for a little bit, but how are they using like an app or something when staff gets to work to verify that they don't have symptoms and stuff, or how is that process?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a really quick process. I've had to complete it all year, as well as, you know, persons who have been reporting to buildings at central office. Every single morning we receive an email. We click if we do not have symptoms, and then we submit it every single day. That goes to human resources. Of course, if there are any folks with symptoms, it's tracked right away. But of course, if folks have symptoms, they are not to report to work. And then, of course, they need to follow substitute teacher protocols. But it is a requirement for all folks who are coming into buildings every single day to make sure that they complete that screener. It's not complex. It's a few questions, and it doesn't take very long.
Okay, yeah, that's what I'm using too. And then as far as substitute teachers go, how are we feeling about, do we have any sort of idea how many substitutes we have in place? Are there any, you know, building subs, or how is that going? I know at the state level they were talking about lowering the requirements, but where are we at with that?
Sure, absolutely. So we have structures in place where we have substitute teachers essentially on call, a permanent group that we have at this time of 50 substitute teachers who are exclusively GRPS substitute teachers. So that's a good thing, where they'll be reporting to our district every single day. So we know that we will have subs on hand, but we also know that 50 in some instances, unfortunately, won't be enough. So in addition to that, we have, I believe, 30 virtual subs who will be supporting our work. And we also have central office folks, of course, those individuals with teaching certificates who can fill in from time to time. And then I know that Eric is on the call. Eric, am I missing anything as it relates to the kind of cadre of substitute teachers that we have? I hope I'm not missing anything, maybe one group or two.
We also have the child care workers and parapros who can sub, but we want to be really cognizant that they have positions already in the district, and we don't want to leave schools or positions open in one place to fill them on the other. But we also do have parapros and child care workers, and we're hopeful that all hands on deck is what we've said. We need to fill positions and need to be in buildings to make sure that we have coverage.
Okay. And then is it safe to assume that if a classroom, for instance, has to be quarantined, that the teacher, if healthy, will just be teaching virtually to the class?
Ms. Davis, I don't think we want to assume anything. Of course, we will continue to consult with Kim Barron, Kent County Health Department, of course, Mr. Johnson, our Chief of Staff. Whenever we have cases in our buildings, I think every single situation is different, but we will consult with those individuals first, and then we will ultimately make the determination in the direction that we want to go. What's great about our district offering a virtual model and a hybrid model is if we do need to go to a virtual model, it will not be that difficult because that's a model with which teachers have familiarity. So I think you bring up a really good point. If we have to if we do get to that point where there's too many folks in a classroom that are sick or the teacher is, we could potentially move to a virtual model.
Okay, awesome, thanks.
Thank you.
And I'm not sure if I missed this, but in terms of staff getting their COVID injection, that's not the right word, but
Vaccine.
how are we doing with that, or is that a priority?
Sure, absolutely. So we've been sending school employees, of course, those who have direct contact with students are high on the priority list. Many of our teachers are signing up. I know that John, I think that John is on the call, Reverend Matthias. I can pull him in. Craig, can we pull John in? He can maybe give a real-time update of how well that is going.
Yep, and I can also speak to the legislative question that Kim raised as well. So on the vaccinations, you'll see we shared another update to all staff today. I'll double check and make sure, but I'm pretty sure I forwarded that to all the board earlier today. The long story short is the Kent County Health Department released the link to vaccinatewmi.com. This is the state mandated single point portal for all individuals in the phase 1B of the state's vaccination plan. Those individuals include all law enforcement, police, fire, public and private school employees, and that's all public and private school employees, as well as other designated essential workers. There are far more individuals eligible in the phase 1B than the state currently has vaccines. So we've been advised, we sent that link out on Friday as directed. Unfortunately, the link was not working and they were mandated to send it out by the state. So unfortunately, we had a few little bumps there. Some people were frustrated, but they have since been populating that with appointments as they're able to open up appointments based on the number of vaccines that are available. We are going to continue to send that link out, and that link is being sent for all employees. Then late Friday, actually 5 o'clock on Friday, Mercy Health informed us that they have been designated for GRPS employees with targeted appointments for those staff who are in person in schools. And that's all individuals who are, so it's teachers, paraprofessionals, counselors, youth advocates, custodial staff, food service workers, anyone that's going to be in and around kids and in buildings. We are prioritizing the Mercy Health link to those employees. So we are doing both. We are providing a comprehensive, all-inclusive link that's provided by the Kent County Health Department as mandated by state law. That's for all employees. And then in addition to that, we have the Mercy Health link that we had the same problem. We took that link, we popped it out, and within minutes, it either crashed or the appointments were full. We received a new update from Mercy Health with a new link today. We sent it out, and once again, it crashed. So there is some degree of frustration that's within our staff who are trying to use the links. And again, we're the messenger in the middle. We are being directed, here's a link, here's the message, send it to your staff or send it to the targeted staff. We've done just that. We're going to continue to do that. But the Kent County Health Department also said this is not a matter of days or weeks for administering these vaccines. This is more months, and up to 6 months is what we were told by the Kent County Health Department just this week. Now, I think that's maybe they're being a little conservative. Let's hope if with the new announcement that the feds are releasing more vaccines to the state of Michigan. We're hearing that President Biden's team has a comprehensive, a more clear, concise federal strategy. So by on or after January 20th, we fully anticipate having even more information to share. But we are putting it out there. We know individuals are getting vaccines. We're providing it in both a targeted as well as in a broad-based standpoint. So let me stop there, see if there's any questions about the vaccines.
Yeah, just really pleased to see the comprehensive approach that we have, and the turnaround that you all seem to be doing in getting the information to the appropriate people, which hopefully eases our constituents, and the fact that as a district we're doing everything within our power to make sure that the right people are getting it, in relation to keeping not only their kids safe, but our staff as well. So really appreciate that timely information.
Great. On the I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, please, John.
I was going to say on your question, Kim, about the legislation. So we had some nice wins in the lame duck session, probably the most important of which was the critical shortage legislation that was approved. And that would not only eliminate the 3-year cap on individuals working on the critical shortage list, but it also, for just this year, it allows for individuals to work on the critical shortage list without having to sit out for 12 months. So we know that has been one of our most effective ways to fill in any kind of gaps, is to bring back GRPS retirees who know the system, they know the kids, they know the staff. This also, the legislation also eliminates the effective date policy that forces employees to be retired prior to the effective date of the law to gain access. So these were some surgical fixes that are very COVID specific, but that's the good news. Unfortunately, the substitute teacher expansion that would have allowed one time during COVID for any and all public school employees to be substitutes if they did not have a 60 credit hours. So it was providing some further flexibility that did not pass. And right now, I don't anticipate that happening anytime soon.
Okay, thanks for that.
Oh, I'm sorry, one more thing. The alternative certification for special ed also passed. And I don't have a lot of the details in front of me, but that is yet another tool kind of in our tool shed. But of course, there's a lot that goes into the alt certification process. So it's not a quick and easy solution like the critical shortage is.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Baker, are there any other questions before we?
I think that's good. I think that, and then you can, I'm sure President Shockey will weigh in on this as well, but it would be nice, since Tuesday is our next meeting and it'll be the end of the first day, it'll be nice to hear an update on how that day goes. And I know that, I would imagine at least, that all the teachers and building administrators are anxious about how that goes, and it'll be good to hear about that. So thanks for all this great work.
Yeah, Dr. Baker, we're already planning to provide an update at the board meeting on Tuesday, so we will absolutely do that.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So with your permission, Dr. Baker, I'm next going to bring up Steve Petros, who is going to give a MAP, Measures of Academic Progress presentation. So Steve.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Gorman. Good evening. My name is Steve Petros, and I serve as an assessment specialist in the Office of Assessment and Evaluation. I want to spend the next kind of 5-10 minutes kind of going through an overview and then a summary of our most recent MAP test administration from this past fall. And of course, if you have any questions, just hop right in. To begin the conversation or to frame it, I think it's important to remember, or as a reminder, that this past August 20th, the Return to Learn law was passed. And this included a requirement for all districts to administer a benchmark assessment within the first 9 weeks of the school year, and then again at the end of the school year. And then further, if districts were already using a benchmark assessment from the past, they were encouraged to then continue with that same assessment for this current year and then moving forward. And so based on our past precedents with NWEA and MAP over a decade, and then the requirements from the Return to Learn law, our initial strategy, and I'm talking about back in August, was to administer the MAP growth tests to all of our K-8 students once they returned back to our schools under our roof at the end of the first marking period, or the beginning of the second marking period, right around October 19th. And specifically, these MAP growth tests, these are the full tests. It's what we've always administered, and they gave the greatest feedback, all the data that we want. It meets the needs of the Return to Learn law. It allows us to measure any learning loss, again, if any, from last winter to this fall. And it also allows us to measure any student growth looking forward from fall to winter or from winter to spring. However, there is then the decision to remain under a remote or virtual instructional model. And as a result, we kind of had to alter our MAP testing strategy. And so our revised strategy based on remote instruction through the first semester was to allow for remote or at-home test administration. This is brand new. It was just launched by NWEA last spring. Number two, for the first time, we are going to actually allow our teachers to proctor the MAP test to their own student record. Again, this is new for us. And then three, in an effort to kind of ease this task, we actually pulled back from the full-length MAP growth test to what's called a shorter MAP screening test. And this is only about 20 questions per subject. Kids are done in about 20 to 30 minutes. However, the trade-off is that we then receive limited data or feedback from those results. Specifically, we get like a RIT score, a Lexile score, and a national percentile rank. And that's really about it. But of course, the teachers can still use this with other data points that they collect for their instructional decision-making. And so from late October to early November, we pursued this. And over the course of those 3 weeks, kudos to our teachers. They did a tremendous job with online training, and they were able to administer the MAP screening tests to about 9,000 students. Now that represents about 75% of our students that took it last winter. Nonetheless, testing was complete. We were able to analyze the data, and specifically, we were looking at students in grades 4 through 8, and we compared their results from last winter to this fall. And we had some interesting findings. Probably first and foremost, in all grade and subject combinations, except for one, the average change in test percentile actually increased from winter to fall. And what I mean by that is, for any given student, last winter, let's say a student has a test percentile of the 45th percentile. We fast forward to the fall, that same student is at the 55th percentile on the same test. So we consider that a plus 10 or positive 10 percentile point increase. And then for all those thousands of kids per grade, we average those together and we come up with an average change in test percentile. And again, in 9 cases, it went up. Now, it ranged from just a mere 1 point increase to about a 6 to 7 point increase. But again, 9 out of 10 grade subject combinations, the numbers did increase. And further, 60%, maybe 2/3 of our students did demonstrate an increase from last winter, meaning late January, February, late October of 2020. However, there are some implications for virtual or remote test administration. As I mentioned before, roughly 3/4 did participate, but that means roughly 1/4 of our kids did not participate. And that can have a real impact on our district-wide averages. Also, when our students are in our schools, our MAP testing follows some rather standardized and consistent testing practices, test administration practices. Proctors are trained in MAP proctoring, and all of our proctors go through a test integrity, test security, and best practices training. However, with the quick switch to remote testing in October and pushing that role or that responsibility out to 1,000 teachers roughly, there's going to be some variation in how testing occurs or in testing conditions. And by variation, there's a range of things. There's technology, there's internet connectivity, the challenge of some students finding a quiet place to focus for an extended period of time during the test session, family or environment distractions, perhaps even the potential or external assistance during the test event. And so while we didn't meet the requirements of the Return to Learn law, we did administer MAP as our benchmark in the first 9 weeks. It's also important that we're mindful about the quality of this data. And what I mean by that is, like, we're not going to use it for any high stakes decisions. We're not going to use this fall's test events, the remote test events, for educator eval or for program evaluation. It's good data when it's triangulated with other data points that our teachers collect, but it's certainly not the same as what we've been collecting for the decade or more. And then finally, I do want to share also that our experience, our GRPS experience with remote testing is really rather similar to what we're hearing from other districts around Michigan, as well as NWA's feedback from what they're hearing on a national scale. So our experience, whether it's the challenges of test administration, remote test administration, or the cautions around the use of the data after the fact, it does seem to be rather consistent locally, statewide, and nationwide. So with that, if there's any questions, I'd be happy to address them at this time, or you're always welcome to reach out to me afterwards as well.
Well, it seems like its usage is what I've always thought it was best at doing, which was to be a diagnostic tool for parents and teachers. So, and that remains true. And we're not using it for other kinds of high stakes decisions. So that's good to know.
You know, Dr. Baker, I'm glad you brought that up, because there's another piece of the law I want to share. It's kind of a point of pride, I guess, if you will. And that is, for all of our students that took the test this past fall, we were able to mass produce or mass generate the NWEA student progress report. And part of the law requires us to make that available to parents. And so each student has a PDF of their progress report. It's been loaded into our local SIS system, Synergy, and parents can now access that PDF through the Parent View tab within Synergy. And I'm going to guess probably in November, late November, maybe early December, communication did go out to all parents with that information and with some guidance on how to access it. So great point. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, thank you. Any other comments on MAP?
Yeah, along with that same thought, Dr. Baker, I'm just wondering if, along with that data, that it might encourage us to really, for the individual schools, to really talk to their parents about how they can better both equip their kids, learning environments, just opportunities to really say, this is how we can enhance the best education for our kids all the way around. So from the district perspective, but also, as a parent with quiet time, with other kinds of strategies at home, that our individual schools and principals and teachers might have a better opportunity, because this is such a heightened concern given COVID and all that's been experienced so far, that this might be an opportunity for us as a district to better pull all the stops out to encourage a focus on education on all levels.
Just to add to that, in addition to that report I was referencing a moment ago, the NWA student progress report, in that communication that was sent out, there were links to an NWEA parent toolkit, which not only kind of sheds more light on the test and the data it provides, but it was also available in, I believe, 13 different languages. And so there were some live links there to not only to further support the report and to help parents and students make that connection and discuss it further in their homes.
Okay, let's move on to the distance learning participation report.
I'm going to sign off. Thank you, everyone. If you have any further
Thanks,
questions,
Steve.
reach out.
Good
Okay.
afternoon.
Go ahead, Jonathan.
Sure. Good afternoon, Dr. Baker, Ms. Grant, Ms. Davis, and Reverend Matthias. This is just the ongoing report that we've tried to bring to the Academic Achievement Committee each time we meet. And so this report, actually, the data that we have been provided to us through our SDS department shows each week all the way really through entire first semester. So you've seen all of this data other than maybe possibly the last 2 lines on the slide. This goes right up until December 18th, which would have been exam week. So just prior to winter break. It is encouraging in the last few weeks that we're up, upwards of 90 to 91% participation in complete distance learning. So as we transition next week to hybrid learning and continued virtual learning, the hope is that we continue to increase our participation rates. So, is there any questions relating to this data from a district perspective from first semester?
That's good. It's good to see we rebounded after Thanksgiving. So,
And what we'll do, Dr. Baker, is we'll figure out a way to merge these data with the in-person data that we'll have. So we'll figure out how to present that to you, but we'll continue with these participation rates, especially for the folks who are learning on the virtual side.
yeah, this is hopefully this doesn't lead us down a hole, but in terms of that, when a student who is expected to be in person, and I don't want to give you a chance to give permission, but if a student ends up not being in person, but can they log in virtually and still be counted as attending that day?
So coincidentally, that question came up in our academic team. So of course, if a student is participating from home, we can mark that student present. Dr. Baker, if it becomes a situation where the student is never reporting in person, then we may need to determine, is this the appropriate model for that student? Because if the student is exclusively working in a virtual space, then that student should be in a virtual cohort. But so that's something that we will need to monitor. But if there is an extenuating circumstance and the student needs to work from home in a virtual space, if he or she is in a hybrid model, that student will in fact be marked present. But again, that's something we'll need to monitor because it really defeats the purpose if you've signed up for hybrid in person and you're working exclusively virtually.
So in case any high school students are watching this,
yes,
it has to be an occasional extenuating circumstance.
Correct. Thank you for underscoring that, Dr.
Can't negotiate that at 7 o'clock every.
No, let's not negotiate that, and we will be looking at those in great detail, looking at those situations.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Any other questions about the participation piece before we move on to professional learning?
Nope, I'm just glad that you're going to continue monitoring it because I'm interested to see what happens.
Thank you, Ms. Davis.
Yeah, I was going to say too that just in terms of is it if they miss 2 days, we're gonna be on it, not 5 or 7.
I think we'll be looking for patterns, Reverend Matthias. We'll be working very closely with our teachers and our administrators. But again, it's something that we'll be taking very seriously. We have put a lot of work into our hybrid and 100% virtual models. and we'll just be monitoring schools, monitoring classrooms. But to your point, we're not going to wait, until the student does it 9 or 10 times. We'll be looking for patterns early on to determine if students are in the appropriate model.
Okay, thanks. Let's move on to the.
All right. Okay. Eric Harmson, professional learning.
Good evening, Ms. Grant, Ms. Davis, Dr. Baker, and Reverend Matthias. I'm excited about the opportunity to share some information about professional learning and an update. I have some information here, and we compiled this information based on a change in how the state, for teachers and for administrators, how they keep track of professional development hours for recertifications, and have made it easier for teachers to be able to become recertified and count their PD, where our system, our PD system, CALPA, speaks to the state system. So teachers do not have to input their hours into the state system. So we had a download and sent information to the state in December. And our teachers and administrators from July 1st has completed 28,000 hours of professional learning. And that's just such a testament to our teachers and administrators continuing to want to improve their knowledge and their practice. And I'm really proud of 28,000 hours that were completed. That's 518 courses, 690 sessions, and 1,660 hours of sessions. And I think that part of that came out of the pandemic and COVID, and having to be able to provide different modes of professional learning. We had, before the COVID, we had started to switch to a model of delivering professional learning that would provide differentiated ways for teachers to learn. As a person who did a lot of support and professional learning for new teachers before taking on this position, I would go to those after school professional learning sessions, and our new teachers would be worn out from, I just taught a whole day, and I can remember back to when I was a teacher, how tiring that is. I don't think other people well, now they do. Hopefully they do understand a little.
Oh, shoot.
I think Eric may be frozen, Dr. Baker. So I just like to underscore the amount of professional learning that has taken place. And to Eric's point, one of the silver linings during this very difficult period of time is staff members have the opportunity to engage in professional learning from home through modules, and we don't have to bring hundreds of people together. Sometimes it's the best way to do it, but in other times it can be much more independent. So Dr. Baker, if Eric comes back, we'll let him have a closing comment. If not, are there any questions with professional learning before we move to our last slide?
There is one more professional learning slide.
Oh, well, thank you. Please, Jonathan.
Look at it, because I know these were just some highlights that Eric wanted to share.
So you can, again, you can see the bulleted list of all of the, I guess, PD or professional learning accomplishments for throughout the year. Something to be very proud of. Any questions on
some way to measure how much teachers have learned about technology this last year? It's like,
oh my gosh,
just remarkable. So,
and even more with the camera models they're being put in place as well. So the skill sets have gotten greater and greater as the days go on.
Well,
okay.
At some point we can all get together and all those people can get hugs for all the work they've done this year.
Absolutely. So Eric is sending me a text and he lost his internet. So
Dr. Gorman, this is one last slide.
Go ahead, Jonathan. Why don't you take the last slide, please?
Yeah, Eric just wanted to highlight too that we have a Google site that Eric and the PL team put together to provide hybrid and virtual teaching resources. So this has been again, I think another point of pride that Eric wanted to share on behalf of the PL team is that really having a sort of a one-stop shop for all of the different things, all of the learning that has been taking place, and additional resources and supports for teachers through this Google site. And then these are the points of pride that Eric wanted to share. So increased sessions for all staff. I mean, we've had a significant increase in professional learning sessions. Increased flexibility of when and how, as Eric was mentioning, especially through this virtual environment. Trying to really use feedback from stakeholders and surveys and focus groups, and the idea of choice and differentiation based upon individuals' needs, and also a real increase in peer facilitated sessions. We really leveraged a lot of the teacher leadership and expertise across the system to provide, and particularly with the technology rollouts and various things. So they're just some other points of pride that Eric had intended to share from a PL standpoint. So I believe that's his last slide.
Well, thank him for this work.
We absolutely will. We'll try to work on his tech as well.
Yeah. So just make sure he's not teaching any classes next week.
I'm back.
So,
I feel like I got like the hook when you get pulled off the stage. I felt like that happened.
So Eric, Jonathan walked through all of your slides, and I think you did a pretty good job. So any last minute remarks on professional learning, Eric, before we transition to the next topic?
The only thing I did want to focus on is I appreciate all the feedback that we've gotten from our staff, childcare workers, parapros. I met with 18 teachers in December to talk about evaluation and professional learning around the Danielson rubric, and I think are developing some excellent professional learning sessions based on requests of our staff, but also I'm very excited that some of our staff, more of our staff, are those who are actually practitioners, giving them more opportunities to facilitate and lead a professional learning, since they're the ones in the buildings doing the work and know the work the best. So with that, I will end.
Thanks.
Thank you, Eric. So Dr. Baker, this is the last slide of our presentation. Of course, this is next steps and future topics. I know that we will be going through a transition with this particular group, but I think it would be helpful as we begin to plan for next time, if there are some potential topics, keeping in mind that we are going to be starting face-to-face next week, if there are some things that are on the horizon that you believe we absolutely need to address. So we would love to hear just a little bit of feedback before we conclude the meeting.
Yeah, from my vantage point, we've already discussed it, that we'll get updates on the things that you presented today, especially related to the return to learn plan. But, I would just say that, so over my role as chair for the last couple of years is working to bring this committee into a partnership with administration in more ways. And I think that, some of that work got cut short because because of COVID, obviously. One of the things that, I would encourage the next chair to make sure that they focus on is, when we can get back to it, the review of evaluation. We were getting ready to have some feedback from how staff felt about the evaluation processes, and of course that has been cut short. But just in general, using this committee as a way, and I think a great model of the work that we did together was the way we rewrote that the Centers of Innovation program, and how we in the academies, and I think that brought work back into it. So just kind of continue to do this, and I think that in the end it helps the board as a whole to own the work of the district. And so I really appreciate you working closely with that, and in your roles as interim and deputy and et cetera. So anyway, that's my vantage point, is I always want to advocate for this committee being the board partner with academic endeavors. So I don't know if any of colleagues, Ms. Grant, Reverend Matias, or Ms. Davis would like to add. Again, I have no idea where I'm going to land or who's going to be in these chairs the next time they meet.
Yeah, I was, before you spoke, Tony, I was going to say, even short term, I'd love to hear how evaluations are going this year with us being virtual for so long and now moving into hybrid, just kind of an update of how that's been going. Sometime in the next couple months would be nice.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think going forward, this is John, that certainly through all of these experiences, it has challenged us as parents not take for granted the education that we provide our own kids in readiness in partnership with the district. And so I think this has highlighted many areas for us as parents to make sure that we're engaged and that we're communicating as stakeholders. So it's been pretty exciting to see a lot of the transformation in the academic committee and its focus. So I appreciate that.
One thing also that I would love to see is a highlight on, we just got done hearing about some of the professional development and a lot of peer teaching and learning. And I think it would be really fun as a committee or even for the full board to hear some of those celebrations of things that have been accomplished during our virtual learning and just celebrations of some different methods of teaching that have happened.
Thank you for bringing that up, Ms. Davis. That was one area that we always highlighted before the pandemic. We were always bringing celebrations to you, achievement rates, graduation rates, best practices, things of that nature. So that's a great heads up to get back to that in the next couple of weeks.
Awesome.
I don't have anything to add myself. I know that there's a lot of work ahead of us, so I'm sure things will come up as we progress, but I think that you guys have been doing a great job of preparing for each new phase that we're in.
Thank you, Ms. Grant.
All right, nothing else.